Hello, and welcome to episode number 9 of Eye-Opening Moments, where you'll hear stories of adversity, encounters, and perspectives. These are real-life stories that can lift your spirits, give you some food for thought, or move you. I'm your host, Emily K. Tan. In this episode, you will hear about family stigma, she understood, and being right. A moment of adversity called family stigma. That 5-year-old kid who couldn't get a parent to meet with teachers at school was me. My parents lived in another state, and my grandparents couldn't speak English, so no one showed up. That 8-year-old girl walking to the bus stop by herself while other kids had their parents with them was me. Everybody at home was too busy working to mind me. That little girl waiting at the bus stop while other kids laughed at her, saying she didn't have parents, was me. I had parents, but they tossed me at 5, so the kids were right. I didn't have parents. That teenager who only needed to leave a note on the kitchen table to say she was going to a sleepover or meeting up with friends was me. Everybody at home was too busy to mind me. That 25-year-old lady who her boyfriend's family mocked for not living with her family was me. He proposed, but his family objected because I lived in an apartment alone. That married woman who had a husband said her mom didn't love her because she didn't live with her mother was me. He thought he was my knight in shining armor to love me. That middle-aged woman, divorced and living abroad in an Asian country all alone, was me. Locals whispered that something must be wrong with me because I was alone or not with family. Through time, changes in society as to what makes a family or the makeup of a family came to me. Still, the pain of other people's judgment or the snickers behind my back persisted. Explaining why I lived with my grandparents growing up to some people still yielded the strain of other people's opinions or sneers towards me. As a child, thoughts of not being worthy of love since I wasn't living with my parents by the time I was 5 tormented me. My uncles would often remind me that I didn't belong in their household. Grandma would frequently say I needed to love Mom since she sacrificed herself for the family to have an opportunity to be in America. And then I'd wonder why Mom didn't have me in her house. Acquaintances and friends who didn't know my family situation would wonder, make up negative stories, and not ask me. My relatives' friends' comments were also unkind. Did they not know their words were hurtful? Life went on. It wasn't until I was an adult did I realize how much abandonment at 5 impacted my self-esteem, self-worth, and self-love. It affected my thoughts and behavior. It affected every aspect of my life negatively. Ultimate realizations didn't come about until I was 25. That was when I attended the Landmark Forum, a worldwide personal development program. The 3-day event transformed my life. It forever changed my life for the better. Even to this day, decades later, it continues to give me power, perspective, courage, and strength. How could a 3-day event alter a person's life permanently? It could, and indeed, it was a miracle. Through hearing others speak about their lives, I was somewhere in there because we have much more similarities than differences as humans. It was the right education or a wake-up call for me because it allowed me the freedom and space to see myself through others. And when I did, They were breakthroughs or epiphanies. Once discovered, the realizations shifted my perceptions and behavior. Most importantly, I discovered that I have a choice. I choose the stories that I tell myself. Since I chose them, why not choose those that help me rather than allow automatic negative thoughts to control me? The outcomes were happiness and freedom like I had never experienced. It took 25 years because it didn't happen until I took the Landmark Forum. For the first time in my life, I was happy for no reason. And it was the first time I experienced sheer joy from within, self-generated and created with no external causes. Of course, that can come and go, but I know it is within my grasp, and I have the tools to help myself take charge at any time. For a quarter of a century, I always thought I was unwanted and unloved by my family. Because I felt that way, I was miserable, unhappy, chained, and dissatisfied in life. It became irrelevant whether it was the truth or not, because when my perceptions shifted and I discovered more about myself, joy and freedom stepped forward. I get to choose happiness, and I don't need a reason before I am happy. Further, it is for me to say that I am wanted and loved because I said so. So it shall be said, and so it shall be done. A moment of an encounter called She Understood. Grandma 1, my father's mother, raised me before age 5. Grandma 2, my mother's mother, raised me at age 5 for 10 years. I didn't spend too much time with Grandma 1, Betsy, who raised me before age 5. After I was with Grandma 2, Sandy, I hardly saw Grandma Betsy as both were in different states. However, Grandma Betsy moved to the same city as Grandma Sandy many years later. I am sure they had nothing to do with each other. Once a year, though, Grandma Sandy would tell me to visit Grandma Betsy on Chinese New Year to get a red envelope of lucky money. Obedient me, I did. That was how often I saw Grandma Betsy until many years later when she got cancer. Everybody on my mom's side seemed to dislike Grandma Betsy. It was most likely because they felt she was unkind to my mom. Too often, you hear how horrible mother-in-laws are. And I guess, to my mom, she had one of those. I don't know for sure. I do know there was always tension and distance between the two families. And even as a child, I got caught in the middle of it. My visits to Grandma Betsy were far and few. I think I only had the chance to visit her once a year because Grandma Sandy knew the love of a grandmother and asked me to see Grandma Betsy. It didn't seem like Grandma Betsy and I have much of a relationship other than one between granddaughter and grandmother. We didn't have a good or bad connection. The closest I got to her was when she became gravely ill. She had moved to the same city as me because her son, my uncle, was there, and he would take care of her. I could take a train and visit her in less than an hour. As a grown woman, I visited her and my uncle when she was sick. We didn't talk much because she laid in bed most of the time. She was frail. She lost an extreme amount of weight and lost most of her hair. I heard her cancer was terminal and she had less than a year to live. During this time, I got to know her a little bit. I didn't know Grandma Betsy by conversation, as she didn't speak much. I think she was too weak and not feeling well, but I could feel her appreciation that I visited her almost weekly. It made me want to see her more. I just sat with her as she laid in bed. I sat there for hours on end, keeping her company, while my uncle worked in his home office. She would reach out to hold my hand. It should have been the other way around, but it was she who reached out to me. It just held my hand back. I just held her hand back. I didn't know what to say to her. That seemed to be the gist of our relationship. There wasn't much talking, but there was a bond. One time, when she was not so weak, I guess early on in her illness, Grandma Betsy was able to walk and was walking by me and very briefly said, "Don't mind your mother. What she says, that is how she is." I don't remember what my uncle said, that my mom said, but Grandma Betsy must have seen my facial reaction, which I was sure was subtle to show any feelings, but she saw me, and she knew I was hurt. Grandma Betsy didn't explain my mother's words or behavior. Mom wasn't there. That was all she said. But at that moment, I knew Grandma Betsy understood something no one I knew understood. She knew I was the black sheep of my family. I never understood why. She knew that Mom treated me differently and negatively from all my siblings. She knew that I only spent a few years with Mom and Dad in my life, while my siblings spent most of their lives with them. Yet I was the one unliked. I don't know why. Grandma Betsy's short comment told me she knew. Told me it was not all in my imagination, and comforted me that a family member understood my emotional pain and knew how Mom and Dad treated me. As Grandma Betsy's health deteriorated and she was near death, Mom and Dad came to visit. My siblings came to visit. My aunt, my father's sister, also came to visit. Everyone flew in to see Grandma, as we knew the end was near. My parents didn't seem sad. They didn't look sad. They looked like they were doing what they were supposed to do. Only my older sister, my father's sister, and my father's brother, my uncle, were crying and showed any sadness. My father's sister, Aunt Jessie, cried while she sat with Grandma Betsy. Grandma Betsy was not crying. She just laid there, so fragile and sad-looking. I didn't know if Grandma Betsy had all her senses or was alert enough to notice everyone visiting. Somehow, from the corner of her eye, she saw me. She told her daughter to leave the room and that she needed me. This time, Grandma Betsy directly spoke to me. She said, "I told them to go out and that I needed you. Don't mind them. Please don't pay attention to them not being nice to you or ignoring you like you are not important. You are important." She took my hand and said, "I need you. You matter." Despite family tensions and Mom's side of the family loathing Grandma Betsy. Grandma Betsy was kind to me. I wasn't most talkative with her, but her silent connection with me touched me. She mattered to me too. Grandma Betsy soon passed away. I don't think she expressed everything she might have wanted to all the family members, but I know she was very observant, wise, and perceptive woman. Even on her deathbed, Grandma Betsy saw me. She understood me, and I thought I was good at hiding my feelings and putting up a good front of strength. Her understanding was comforting. Without many words, but with a bond, she let me know that she understood my pain with family relations and that I was not to let it rule me because I am important. Lesson learned. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't matter. Don't let anyone take away your importance. I hope Grandma Betsy is resting peacefully and smiling down at me because I got her message now. A moment of a perspective called being right. I am a peace-loving person. How did I ever end up marrying someone who loved to pick a fight or engage in an argument? Unfortunately, it took some time before it became apparent to me after marriage. We were riding in the car, and his older brother was driving us to the border between the United States and Mexico. It was supposed to be a fun and exciting trip to cross the border to Mexico. Hubby and his brother had a casual conversation about what to expect when he reached the border. His brother Greg said that there was a barbed wire fence at the border, and if anyone wanted to climb it to get across, they would get electrocuted. Greg informed us, and hubby turned it into an argument by questioning whether the fence had bolts of electricity. It didn't take long before Greg said he'd turn the car around if hubby continued with his suspicions, when Greg said he was only informing us. My friend and I quietly sat while they were engaged in a short argument. My only thought was, why did such a trivial matter need a debate? And why put a damper to the fun so unnecessarily? Hubby had to have the last word to suggest that he was right in that he couldn't be sure if the fence could electrocute you. On another occasion, hubby was at his dad's house, and his dad told him to hurry and file his tax returns. Hubby was known for waiting until the last minute or passing the deadline. I thought his dad was reminding him, but hubby argued his reasons for not filing sooner. He said it was complicated and others didn't understand. I couldn't believe he was yelling about it to his dad for over an hour when his father was only trying to remind him. Hubby ended up filing it past the deadline. Despite the errors in his ways, he insisted that he was correct with his reasons not to file on time. He disrespected his father and tarnished my tax records. On many occasions, hubby would be dissatisfied with something I did in the house. It could be that I wiped the table after dinner and it was not clean enough, because when he closed the lights and examined it with a flashlight, the table seemed to be smudged. It could be that while I cooked and cleaned and did all the bills, I did not also assist him in mowing the lawn or washing the car. It could be that when we got home from work and I didn't rush to greet him each time. It could be that I had a friend stop by to visit and I didn't ask him for permission first. All such matters warranted him 2 hours to demonstrate that he was right and I was wrong. Hubby would scream at me for 2 hours each time he got enraged over anything he did not like. He would tell me how I should do everything and that I was wrong. He would go on and on. If I didn't say anything in response, he would continue telling me how bad I behaved. If I said something to explain my perspective or understanding, he would continue to tell me how wrong I did something. If I went to the bathroom, he would follow me to continue his rampage. If I locked the bathroom, he would get his tools to get the door unhinged and take the door down so he could see my face and continue his screaming. He would not stop his screaming until about 2 hours. It seemed that after 2 hours, he felt he said enough to prove his case. He would not stop, or you could not stop him until he had his fill. During his rampages, I have told him that he had a right to his own opinions and that I sometimes had views different from his. But he insisted that his views were the right ones and demanded I understand that. I have told him that his persistence in making me agree with his ways and dismissing my ideas as wrong only leaves me feeling unloved and unaccepted. His response was only a continuation of how accurate he was in some matters. Hurt with pain, I told him his continued screams made me love him less and less. His reaction was only to continue to say that he was right, and I needed to understand his correctness. Though I tried to understand or deal with his temper and self-righteousness, my efforts were useless. Though I sought help from others, it was useless. However, having lived with his self-righteousness for over 8 years, one lesson I learned has stayed with me to serve me well. Whenever someone wants to persuade me about something that I disagree with, I would state that I disagreed and that we didn't need to agree. Then I'd walk away. I would not need anyone to agree with my perspectives, and I would have no need to agree with theirs either. By not making anyone right or wrong, I have the freedom to accept myself and others. I still believe we all have a right to our own perspectives, and I choose the perspectives that help me and serve me. Whenever I feel an urge to make someone wrong for something they did, I would stop and remind myself that I am making them wrong and making myself right. Whenever I am angry at someone for not doing something the way I would like, I remind myself that I am imposing or demanding my way. Noticing and catching these instances, I can stop my self-righteous stance. If I don't, I know I have a price to pay. I only need to look at the experience with my ex-husband. His need to be right was more important than our marriage. He valued being right more than he valued our marriage. He chose it. He paid the price. I don't know if he realized that, even though I verbalized it to him previously. I know I learned a grave lesson and gained more perspective. I thought the marriage was more important and didn't want to fight over whose way was right constantly. But he disagreed. The next time I disagree with you, I ask myself, is it worth it? Do I need to fight about it? Is the friendship or relationship more crucial? Or is the disagreement more important? If the relations are more important, then drop the bickering. Though I was the black sheep of my family, I didn't need to accept it like it was a fact. I can choose the stories that I tell myself and select those that would help or serve me well. Though my parents didn't treat me nicely, it was comforting to know that someone knew and saw how I was treated. Most importantly, on her deathbed, Grandma let me know that I mattered and that I was an important human being. What a gift she gave me. Though I divorced my husband, I learned a valuable lesson from how he was. Being right, being self-righteous, or demanding that others see your way or agree with you could have repercussions. So ask yourself if it is worth it. Next week, you will hear 3 real-life stories called Unusual Cries, This Way Out of Hell, and Being Young, Being Old. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a comment, share it on your social media, or go to inspiremereads.com. Thank you for listening.